Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast Open Mic Night. I am your co-host, Gail Anthony Greenberg, here with the always vivacious Chris Seveny,
Good
full
evening.
of iron-rich blood.
Good evening, Gail. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I am representing your state tonight.
Yes, I saw Boston University, and as I mentioned before we came on, I will be taking the Acela right by BU this next week. So be up in Boston for the week for visiting some family. But it'll be a good trip to go up and so forth, and catch up a little bit also on some of my note stuff as well while I'm up there. But
it's a shame your daughter isn't ready to go visit RISD yet. You could just get it all in at once.
I know. So,
Yes.
What have just happened to you, Gail? Any new and exciting news in your world?
I actually got some pretty exciting news. After a grueling application for historic tax credits on a property that I am renovating down south, I got a preliminary, maybe we're going to give them to you this week. And then I forgot that was just the state application. It's a good thing I asked what happens, because there's a federal program too, and I thought it was sort of automatic that they would send on the application, which was many parts and like tons of photographs and architectural drawings and elevations and HVAC plans, kind of stuff you deal with every day, but is completely foreign to me. And it turned out that they needed another package, like all this stuff. So I was running around like a crazy person yesterday, getting Walgreens to reprint the photos and getting the architectural plans re-outputted. And there's Neil. He's gotten so comfortable with us podcasting. He just wanders around in the background.
Well, I've so two things really I got going on. One is had a property that I took back at foreclosure that got under agreement and ended up getting that sold. So I got the check today, which is nice on that property. So it'll be a nice little return to the investor on that one. And on the other side,
state was that one?
Maryland, Baltimore. So
backyard.
Yep. So, but the other thing that I've got going on, as mentioned to you, is I've got these two properties right now that they're not in horrible shape. I'd say they're livable, but they definitely need some, cleanup and some paint and new flooring and stuff like that. But so I'm in the process of debating, to go back and forth. Okay, do I renovate these to increase the price, or do I just sell it as is? I got this one in Fort Wayne that I got a price last night from the guy with no breakdown, no nothing. And my agent said today, oh, you had two showings today and you're going to expect an offer. So it's always like, do I wait a few extra days, or it's going to take me a while to negotiate with this guy anyways, because I don't think he knows what he's getting himself involved in when I start putting a scope together for him. But
yes, since you are a professional manager of construction projects, I imagine working for you, like these, handymen in these quiet towns, like just never know what they're getting into.
They usually never return my calls after a scope of work, but it's actually good in a sense, because the people who won't respond are probably the ones I don't want to deal with anyways. I mean, you don't have there's nothing in there that's, I'd say, extremely overburdening, but it's like...
No, it's just the 80 pages of details and accountability.
So I usually break it down. I try and keep it under 7, but I mean, it's just like, okay, let's take, the living room, replace all the receptacles, remove and reinstall the base after installing the flooring. Here's the type of flooring I want in. Here's the paint color for the walls. Here's the trim. Here's the ceiling color. And it's like, okay, that ends up taking, when you itemize it, a third or, half a page. And when you got 5, 6, you just got 3 pages of scope. So
Now, this is interesting. As a non-gay man, do you choose your own finishes, or do you consult with someone who's known to have ability in that area?
I have zero ability.
Yeah, I
So,
suspected as much.
so fortunately, in my full-time job, um, one of my coworkers has a master's in interior design and architecture.
Hmm.
So anytime if I needed something, I'm like, okay, Katie, give me this paint color, or something.
Yeah.
But and again, I typically do not upgrade properties. I'd rather just dump them, the whole velocity of money thing. But in this instance, now, I still have all the paint colors from when we built our house. So I have all the Sherwin-Williams, and I'm like, okay, light gray or, so forth, whatever color. Can't.
That is.
That is, Sherwin-Williams, 2021. So that's what I can pick as well.
Well, you see, I have sort of like a variation. It's sort of a Venetian fading plaster kind of look on my walls.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to really restrain myself. So this is, I think, kind of an interesting talking point. I have a contractor in Indiana who took a house that realtors told me I would get $10,000 for. He moved in for a week because he wasn't local, he and a partner. They renovated like crazy. They surprised me by putting laminate floors through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think laminate's gotten better, but every time I see a really beaten up house, it's got laminate floors that are like peeling, and it looks like contact paper. So I've not ever been a fan of laminate. And it was also like very like really bold colors in a way, like kind of brown and beige, but like way I would have gone with something much more subtle. And when I first saw it, he was so excited to show it to me. I didn't want to say like, wow, I really am not sure about these floors. But the house ended up selling like a week later for almost $50,000 after I was told it would, I put $5,500 in beforehand. It'll sell for 10. Now it's under contract for 50. So I'm thinking, like, he also is not a gay man, and I don't necessarily agree with his choices, but the thing sold like right away. So I'm thinking maybe I should just stay out of it. Now he's renovating another house with me, and we got into a discussion about the kitchen cabinets and what color they should be. And I kind of thought to myself, why am I like, he's from Indiana? Like, he probably, he renovates for other people out there. He really knows like what people in Indiana like, which could be completely different from Philadelphia.
It's interesting because that's like the hardest thing, like, especially like for my full-time job, I work for a company that, owners are like, okay, they want to build this building and they want to pick like all the finishes that they love, which it's their money, they should be. But also you got to think about it is, they're trying to build a building for millennials when they're, empty nesters. And, it's one of those things
Different
where,
generation.
the generational gap. So something they like isn't really what, millennials may like. So it's, it's challenging in that sense. But one thing I was going to note is if you do floors and stuff, I always recommend the luxury vinyl tile, the wood looking.
That's what I like. Do you do the plank or the tile?
I do. Well, it's a plank. It's I think 6 inch by 36 inches.
Yeah.
And if you're doing rentals, do that.
Yes.
And get the thicker. I think it's 9 millimeter, and because that's a little heavy duty and also a lot of the times it's waterproof as well. You put in.
Yeah, definitely.
Every developer now is basically putting those in apartments and almost getting rid of carpet because you don't have to worry about it for years. So
right. Right, and you put it in the bathroom. You don't have a different floor. You just put it in every room, and it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
It's very scuff resistant. Never has to be refinished. It's waterproof. It's amazing. Yeah, I clarified this with my contractor. I was like, okay, that's fine. We're selling these houses. You can put laminate in if But in my rentals, we're doing vinyl plank, luxury vinyl plank. So
we actually have the king. I just noticed the king of rehab is on tonight. So, Mr. Chad.
would that be the man from up north?
Yes. So
Our neighbor to the north.
neighbor to the north, so is on, and I'm sure he could add a lot to his renovation stories and stuff. But speaking of topics tonight, if people want to, in the question box or Q&A or chat box, ask any questions pertaining to anything regarding notes, feel free. It's always kind of open mic, open sessions, and we kind of just roll with the punches on what we talk about. And, so far we've been talking about, renovate or not renovate. And I'm curious the opinions out there, what people, what their sense is and what their business plan is to, increase the value or, get rid of it and move on to the next. And I'm curious because there's a lot of pros and cons, as you know, Gail, to both.
Yeah, so the place in Fort Wayne, you have a realtor already showing that house to investors in its as is.
Yeah.
How bad is it? Is it really disgusting, or is it just needs updating?
It's not disgusting. It needs work. And the other component to it is, I've got the city also sending me like a violation notice about the shed, like 5 violations on the shed. And so I have a guy actually, I think he was supposed to do it today, just take the shed down. And, the house needs to be power washed. Inside, it definitely needs new floors throughout, new kitchen. It needs to be rehabbed. I mean, I wouldn't leave it as a rental in its current condition. The price I got though, basically it was to power wash and paint the outside of the house, put a new roof on it. It's an 800 square foot house, so it's small. Paint the outside, replace 2 windows, put a new roof, vinyl plank flooring throughout, paint and redo the kitchen. It was like $15,000. So it's not, anything, it was, not extraordinarily expensive. And, the challenge is going to be, okay, if I put in this 15,000, will I get 20,000 back? I don't want to break even on it. I want some incentive on it. So
what did the realtor say about the value now and the value, what it would be after you did that?
So I'm waiting to hear back from her on that. So she's supposed to get back to me, but that's a challenge again that we've had many episodes with realtors. She originally told me I could get 25 to 30,000 for this thing, and every offer I've gotten is between 10 and 15. But I did have another realtor originally who I talked to also mention that it's probably worth about 20 to 25,000. So I don't know. Right now, it's probably just, I think, again, a lot of investors and fix and flippers or wholesalers just trying to lowball it because they know it's an out-of-state investor. Whereas that's kind of a challenge. If I can get it market ready, then I'd probably have more, people involved and also even investors maybe looking at it for rental, because for the rental purposes, I think they said, probably get $600 to $700 a month. So.
I know it's amazing how many investors who really know how inexpensive it would be to fix something will still not offer you like the fair as is price. Like they still want to just lowball it to such a degree.
And the other thing too, even with some investors is, some that offer like the owner financing, it's like, oh, I'll sell it to you 15,000 cash, or I'll do owner financing, 5 down and 500 a month for 5 years. And I'm like, okay, so that's basically, 35,000 for $15,000 cash. I understand, like, okay, you mark it up, your owner finance price is usually a little bit higher, but I'm like, not that much higher,
Yeah, that's even beyond what I would do in my greediest moments.
So, yeah, I usually, I may add $5,000, or something. So, if I had a $20,000 property, maybe make it 25,000, with the financing and stuff. But I wouldn't make it 30 to 40. And then I get people who I'll reach out to, and I'll be like, "Oh, what are your owner financing terms?" And they're like, "Oh, I'd love to tell you. Give me your phone number and your contact information and all this other stuff, and I'll call you." And I'm like, "If you give this to me, then forget it."
Let me get a call from the closer. Yeah. So I just wonder, do you think I would like to ask the whole group this? You've all had experiences with realtors. Do you think realtors give you these higher than you're really going to get prices? Do they do that because they're just not paying attention, because they actually believe it, or they really just want you to sign the listing agreement and then they will drop the boom 3 weeks from now? Oh, it's not, you're not going to get 25, you're only going to get 12. Okay.
Christine said she's a realtor. Sons are not real experienced. Like, here's another one that I get from them. What are you looking to get for this property? I said, well, that's why I'm hiring you. Secondly, I'm 1,000 miles away. I've never seen the property. I've never been inside the property. That's why I'm hiring you. To
in
do
my
that.
dreams, $100,000.
In some of these properties, like I tell them, I'm like, I want this thing sold in 30 days. And one of them, I said, here's the deal, that I won't sign 6 months. I only sign a 90-day agreement. And one of them, I joked, I said, okay, if you don't get this under agreement in 30 days, your commission gets cut in half. Then I'm like, now tell me what the sales price is on this house.
So you write this into listing agreements with realtors?
I tried.
I was saying we should have done that in Bryant, because we have a very lackadaisical realtor. And I think we've got them for way too long.
Yeah, I mean, but, trying to look at this, I'd say take a step back. It's a $10,000-$15,000 house that is a shithole. And, and the guy, isn't going to make really anything off of this. But, well, actually, no, it was what, $2,500 was his fee?
$2,000.
$2,000.
Yeah, he gets $2,000 even if we sell it for $5,000, which is the last offer he brought us. So I said, if we're selling it for $5,000, you're not getting $2,000, because I think we owe $3,000 of taxes and code enforcement.
Yeah, this was part of Gail and I's purchase where we bought six
houses. Yeah,
6 completely blind at the bottom. So
that was the most impetuous thing I've ever done.
As we
other than marrying a man who it turned out had been married not once before, which is what he told me, but twice.
I chuckle because we always preach everyone do your due diligence and get eyes on the property and everything. But there may come a time when somebody calls you up and says, hey, can you buy these properties for like $1,000 a piece or some number? And you need to close tomorrow. And you go online and you look at one of them and it is in decent shape. Yes, buy all of them. It's
yes. That was very much what the situation was. So I think it's valuable to do something kind of stupid once in a while, like just take a chance, take a big leap. Because it's just, it's just good to confirm to yourself that you can be spontaneous and feel free. And, like on the flip side, so many people are so crippled by fear and concern, and they're just analyzing everything to death. It felt like such a breath of fresh air. And really, we did extremely well on that. We are down to like the ones that were easy to sell and exit from. We have sold and exited from. We're down to like the hard stuff that is like, we have to scrape off the bottom of the barrel. So,
I mean, something like that, and you really got to weigh the risk versus reward that we had involved in this. And it was really a no-brainer. I know some other people were looking at these and they wanted to try and cherry pick some, and the seller wouldn't let it. And I remember having a conversation.
And that's why we got them. Lesson to all, because we said yes instead of I'll take these and not those.
And I know you were a little hesitant. I had to twist your arm a little bit.
I definitely was. Yes.
And I think your conversation was, even if 2 of these are worth, anything, and one of them was like a 2-acre property, I'm like, the land itself has to be worth something. Okay. Just do it, so.
And I thank you for dragging me into that deal. And it's been really educational and kind of fun. And, I just, we're trying so hard to sell the last 2, and we have one in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, we've talked about this on the regular podcast, has been the most difficult place in terms of paperwork and the title companies. The title companies question absolutely everything. And we had a quitclaim deed from a prior owner who had a land contract, but even though they had a land contract, Harbor still had them quitclaim deed the property back to Harbor. And the title company, this was, in 2015, and the title company came back and said, like, there is no, it doesn't say on the quitclaim deed from this couple whether they were married or not. And I said, well, they have the same last name. Like, what difference does it make since they both signed it, like whether they were married or not? And they kept not agreeing with me that it wasn't a big deal. Like, they kept insisting that they needed that. And it turned out their concern was that not that the people weren't married, but they might be married to somebody else. So they both have the same last name, but maybe they're married to two other Mr. and Mrs. Joneses. So I actually had to, the woman is a widow now, and I had to find her and get her to go to a notary in a little tiny town in Oklahoma and sign an affidavit of marital status saying that, yes, the time they quitclaim deed this, they were married to each other and not to other people.
So,
and yeah.
I was going to say, here's a question for everyone that's on. So kind of, this is the Gail versus Chris dilemma. So Gail brought this up to me, and there's 15 items on the title they wanted done, and Gail's like, okay, boom, 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 I'll do this and stuff, and or I think the option was give them like $1,500 back. So
yeah.
First thing that pops in my mind is give them the $1,500 and just get it over with thing. And Gail's, stubborn Gail is like, no, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and
yes,
within a week and a half or 2 weeks, you've, I think, almost crossed the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's holding us up is, as usual, NAA and Harbor, who have to sign some paperwork. But yeah, I was going to say, I'm like that annoying woman that you're behind in the checkout line who's like fiddling. I'm really not. I do value time, but there's something about these quests, to get certain things. And it really is like the Grail story. I'm intrigued by it. I love the treasure hunting. I love the challenge. So yeah, I probably do more things than I should. But if I don't have a 60-hour week job. This is my 60-hour week job.
I would pose to people out there, if you have the option of spending, call it an extra hours over the next 3 weeks to get something done, or give somebody back $1,500 on a deal, and you're going to make money on the deal, what would you do? I'm curious for other people. I mean, actually, I'm glad you took care of all that stuff because it paid off. I thought it would be much more difficult to get it done, but you, cracked the whip and, definitely got it done. But I'm curious for the people out there what their opinions are on things.
That's true. That is another reason that I do it, because I'm like, it's like I'm at a big console and I know which buttons to push to get it done. So it's, I look at it. I was just thinking about this today. Like, most people in their life, how many houses will they buy and sell? Like maybe 2, 3. And I mean, I sold 3 houses last month, and like, these things become so, ordinary. And when they first generated this list of what was needed to get this thing closed, Oklahoma style, everyone totally freaked out, including the realtor. And I looked at the list and I was like, I only see like 2 things on here that are really challenging at all to get. So yeah, that's the other thing. I get impatient with how, fragile and timid people are. It makes me want to like, whoa.
So yeah, well, I'm on the goal of, attempting to have property in all 50 states. So
yeah,
right now,
You just got Montana. You're like,
Montana.
you ever
So
do like a cross country? This was okay before devices in cars, like road trips, family road trips. Trying to see one of every license plate from every state. That's what you're like. You're like the grown up, you
So
know.
we used to drive from Massachusetts to Florida 2 to 3 times per year.
Oh my God.
Chevy Mark III van with my parents and 2 sisters, and this was back in the mid 70s and 80s, and up to early 90s till I went to college and stuff. And I'll tell you, this was before electronic devices and everything, as you know, and
Yes.
I look back now and I'm thinking there is no way I would drive 1,200 miles with my kids without electronic devices.
Yeah, you'd have to actually talk to them. They'd probably be in the back,
Uh,
almost touching each other. Did you do that? Like, oh, he's touching me. Um, Now
so,
here's a memory. South of the border. Do you remember that place?
of course,
And then
Pedro,
Stuckey's,
well,
Stookies or
so
Stuckey.
Stuckies, yep. But as you get to the south of the border, with about 120 miles till you get there, you'd see Pedro says and all these billboards, top of the border, and it's like we're getting there, and then we'd stop, and it was really not that exciting.
It was like a big gift shop with a diner attached to it. Yeah, and like the worst kind of Hispanic cliches, Oh, south of the border.
I don't really think those would go in today's society.
No. Is it still there? I wonder.
I don't know. I
Road
don't
trip.
drive. I fly.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Um, but Christina actually answered a question. She said she would still do it herself if it speeds up the process. But then, let's see, it speeds up process clear with a clean title buyer. I give them 1,500 over spending all my time on that, but it's hard to say because she likes the treasure hunt too, like you.
Yeah. I think realistically, I spent 3 hours. So that's like $500 an hour. That's
Yeah,
good money.
it's
Even
worth
for you, Chris. Yeah. I mean, it's not what you make, but
I wish I made 500 an hour.
oh my God.
So yeah, Matt also mentioned, kind of agree with us both. It really, if you enjoy doing it and how much time you spend, it really, I mean, that's what it comes down to is, how much time you're going to spend and, whether or not you can get it, because I honestly, in this instance, I did not think you'd be able to reach out to that borrower because this is like middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. And,
Yeah.
It's.
Well, I have an excellent skip tracing database. So good that my friend, who's an investigative reporter at the Philadelphia Inquirer, asks me for skip traces because what he has access to is at a major newspaper is not as good as what I have.
Well, you use TLO services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah.
He's actually doing a great series of interest to real estate people about scammers in Philadelphia, and I'm sure they exist elsewhere too, who steal properties of deceased people or situations where there's like an abandoned house. Like they file false deeds, and they have crooked notaries who are in cahoots with them. And it's very interesting. And someone even went so far as to do a quiet title by sending the certified letters to like allies of his, and these people would actually sign for them and everything, and pretending to be the people, and it's crazy.
That is pretty crooked, where you basically, someone's deceased, you forge a deed into your entity name, and then quiet title it after the fact as well. That's pretty.
It's bold. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can go any lower in the pond, than that. I mean, that's pretty bad. So.
Yeah, if anyone wants a link to the story, I can put it up. It was like very intriguing, and now there's more. It turns out there's multiple people doing this.
So I would ask the people who are on, again, back to that question of what's your magic number of, if you had to do, 10 to 15,000 in rehab, what would you want to see a gain on that? Based on, assuming you have to spend some time, you're out of state, make sure you vet the right people and stuff like that. I'm curious to hear from others on what the magic number is.
I think we need to get Chad on here to talk about how he decides what he's going to do.
So let's see. He could be in the car or whatnot.
Yeah.
If he wants to hop on, he can pop in, or I see a few other people on here as well. Scott Van Campen was on earlier. Christine's on. Dave, John.
Do we know what happened with Chad's? Oh, there he is.
There is. Are you talking ROI? Okay.
Do we know like the rest of the story about that one in Missouri that Chad had, where he was going to go see the code enforcement person?
Hold on. Hey, Chad.
Hey guys.
Hey, Chad.
I lost my video here. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What I do is, it's not very scientific, but if I can double my money on the rehab that I'm going to put into it, I'll go for it. Okay. So if I put in 10, 20 grand and I can make that back on top of the whatever it is I'm going to get in the first place, then that's kind of what I do. So
yeah.
Here's the other
if I'm going to lose money on a property, I'm definitely going to rehab it to make at least something.
Have you ever rehabbed a property just to break even, so you could break even?
Yeah,
or in hopes of breaking even.
The one that I discussed the last time, yes. I'm hoping to break even on that. Well, I was hoping to make 5 or 10 grand, but it's listed for sale and everything around it is selling except for mine. Although it's only been listed for a week and a half, but
yeah. What actually happened with when last heard from? You were going to go see the code enforcement guy, or you were going to go talk to him? Or, like what happened?
No, it finally, they had the contractor that cleaned it out. I don't know what was with this contractor. He just couldn't get his act together to go down to the city. And well, allegedly he went down twice, and both times he went down there, no one from the city knew what he was even there for. Because the inspector he's nowhere to be found, this inspector. I've called him umpteen dozen times and he never answers his phone, never responds to email in a timely fashion. So the few times the contractor did go down originally, they didn't even know what he was there for. So the third time he went, he was given all the info, the inspector, and the inspector has finally released the ban on the property for people entering it. However, he had the contractor go down and meet with him there, which he did, and released the ban. However, while he was in there, he found some electrical that was not up to code that the previous occupants had meddled with. So he's got a open permit pulled for that, and then he proceeded to tell me that all the subflooring needs to be replaced.
Why? Because of the
urine
filth
that it's soaked into it, apparently. So that is not a permit or a code issue. So I said, no, we're not replacing the subflooring. We are selling it as is. So we'll put the electrical thing in there because that is a permit issue now.
Right.
No, we're not putting. And he wanted us to put that in the remarks in the listing, but
toxic house. It makes a good headline.
Yeah, so I just said to the realtor, no, let's just put the electrical thing in there because that's the only thing that's permittable.
Right. So just to be clear, to replace the subflooring means taking up the flooring, right?
Yes, and this is it's hardwood flooring throughout, like original hardwood flooring. No, I don't think so. Like we can resand those, and those are actually pretty valuable. Hardwood because they don't make it like they used to. So
yeah, I had a house where they had a lot of animals and they had carpet over subfloor. And I thought we were going to have to replace all of that, but it turns out that Kills is really, really effective at sealing all that in.
Yeah, well, basically you just sand it all off, and that gets rid of. You may have to go down a quarter of an inch, but you just sand it all down, and you know that old hardwood is some of it's 3/4 inch thick, so it's pretty durable. So you just sand it down, and then you can. Well, actually, some people put. I think you kills it first, and then that gets rid of the majority of the bacteria and the smell of it, and then you sand it off.
Yeah.
Restain it.
I had a question for both of you and people listening as well. And this is not the case in this situation. I'm curious how you would approach this. So say you had a deal that, you were in it for 20 grand and, it wasn't selling or it was about break even, and you can renovate it for 15 grand and make 30 on it. But you also have a JV partner. And the JV partner comes in and says, I don't have any money to contribute to the renovation. You need to contribute to it. How would you handle that situation?
I just had that situation actually where, so I have talked about this before. I was ripped off by a contractor to the tune of $8,000. And my JV was using IRA funds and was pretty much tapped out. And I guess just the combination of having made that mistake, I felt responsible, and knowing that it would be, hard to impossible for her to come up with the additional. We needed like another $5,500 to pay a real contractor to really fix it. And I just paid for it. And then I got, when we sold the house, that's the one that we were told we'd get 10 for, and we got 50 for it. So we just each got paid back first before we did, split anything.
But, like in this situation, or it's not a real situation, but because I've not been in this, but I've contemplated this in the past where all of a sudden I've got as much money or possibly have as much money in this deal as my partner. They're getting 50% of the profit. They're getting all this upside from the renovation where they haven't contributed anything. So, I'm just curious because it's going to happen to investors out there where you've got a deal and, it's a $20,000 deal and it can sell for 20 grand and you may have to put 20 grand into this thing and be in it for 40, but then it sells for 60. You're now in it for, both have as much money in it,
and you did all the work.
So I'm curious. Chad, have you ever ran into that? Just curious.
So I have a specified rate in my joint venture agreements that if and when we do a rehab, that we split it 50-50. So I make it clear up front. And I also have a clause in there that basically, so kind of what you've done, Gail. It's more or less a prorational share. Is that the right word? The prorationate? Proportionate. So if I'm putting in, well, like in your case, Chris, if you're putting in as much as them and you're both in at 50-50, you should get 75% basically. That's kind of how mine's written. So
mine's written right now that if I put money in the deal, and again, there's language in JVs about stuff, but if I have to put money in the deal and it's more than a certain amount, some deals I front $500 or whatever, but if it's more than a certain amount, then basically it's considered a loan to the deal that collects an interest rate is how mine's written right now. So
the last time I had an investor who was in a deal in Michigan where we just, it was very kind of disappointing and frustrating. We had, it was a contract for deed. The woman had not paid for, 6 months or something. And she didn't reinstate, but she started paying again. She paid some upfront money, like quite a bit considering her circumstances. And she paid for like 2 months and then she stopped paying again. And, so we got a chunk of money, then we got 2 payments, and then she stopped. And it took quite a while to kind of, figure out, legally start the legal process. Then, she reached out and it turned out it wasn't going to be sustainable for her to stay. So there were many months without a payment. And then the house was such a mess that I didn't feel like there was a choice. Like we really literally would have gotten nothing for it. And we also wouldn't have been able to put anyone in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did decide, because it was going to be like, this was sort of, I think, around a 1,300 square foot house. And to do what you were talking about, Chris, to all new floor, kitchen, bathroom, paint. It was like an $11,000 job. And I told my JV that, and he's like, I don't have it. And he's a doctor. But the problem is, he was fully invested. All his money was tied up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I offered him, I was like, he said, not only do I not have the money, I'm actually having issues, and my ceiling caved in at home. I'm struggling to pay for it. And I just said to him, like, do you want me to find another investor to buy you out of this deal? And he very immediately said yes. And I felt bad in a way, because we did renovate it, and the guy, the JV who stepped in to his shoes, made an instant like 35% in 3 months.
Oh, I was gonna say that's one that they made that. And that's one thing as we talk about some of these topics like this is, as you start to get more notes in your portfolio, making sure you really budget properly and have reserves is so imperative. There's stats out there that it's like 95% of businesses don't go out of business because they don't make money. It's because they don't have cash flow, because they don't manage. And it's something that, you always make sure you have plenty of reserves for something that could happen, like, an unexpected water bill or whatever it may be.
Oh yeah, water bills. We've both been nailed there. I don't feel like I can ask. Well, I mean, I prepare JVs, particularly if it's a contract for deed. Like I always tell them at the beginning, like, I don't want you to give me $15,000 extra in case we renovate this at some point. Yeah. But I just want you to know that if it goes that way, you need to be prepared. Yeah. Like, don't invest that money with somebody else.
Yeah. But so here's something kind of little different topic, but it's a situation that just popped in my head as we were talking about one of your borrowers and stuff. Is with CFDs, kind of flip side of things is I've got a CFD where the borrower's payment's like $220 a month, and they're 2 months behind, so their reinstatement's like $450. So now here's the reality. It's one of those things. Do you spend the money and send the demand letter, which again can get added to the loan and stuff, but it's like, am I really sending somebody a demand letter over $400 type thing? It's kind of, it's like, but they're behind, and okay, but you don't want to wait 6 months. But it's like, at what point, on some of these other loans, do you send a demand letter?
This sounds like one of those situations. Didn't you just ask on Facebook if people do any borrower outreach themselves?
Yeah.
Sounds like the perfect example of something where you either pay somebody $100 to send a demand letter, or you could just make the call, right? Like, hey.
Okay, so hold on. I'm texting you her phone number right now.
I happen to be great at this. I do very good phone calls.
Question did come through for reserve amounts. You recommend percent each deal, fixed amount per deal, or some other guideline? So it's kind of like the question of how much does a house cost to renovate? There's so many major factors. I typically never do anything less than $2,000 as a reserve. And it typically varies between 2 and 5, and each investor is very different, because some investors will take $5 to $7 grand, but on most deals, and it depends, like if there's $6,000 due in taxes, I'm going to say, okay, we're probably going to have to pay these taxes. But if taxes are paid and the borrower's made a payment in the last 90 days, I'm not going to ask somebody for $5-6 grand. I'll say, okay, let's put $2,000-3,000 in reserves for now, because there's still boarding, there's all the costs you had up front and stuff. But once that goes through, it's kind of one of those things where I don't want to have all that money, honestly, just sitting in my bank account in a sense, that's just sitting there. I'd rather have, you hold on to it. I know other people are complete opposite on that. And say, no, you should get the money from them so you don't have to go back and ask them. But it really is how you set it up front in that initial conversation, which is, hey, look, I'm going to get, $2,000 right now. If this, or this happens, we may have to go back to the well. And I've had to go back a few times on some foreclosure deals where an attorney just charged me a ridiculous amount in a certain southern state.
Is he on the list?
I haven't added him on the list yet.
Okay.
But so the foreclosure did cost more. So I did go back to them and, basically said, hey, here it is. And they knew up front that the foreclosure was going to be like $5,000 to $6,000, ended up running about $8,000.
So, gosh, what state? This is not Florida. Oh, Florida. Florida.
It's, I'd say it's a few things. One is it really depends on the asset, because if it's an Ohio non-performing note, you're probably going to want to have like 7,000 to 10,000, because of foreclosure costs. Now, all of a sudden, if it's a CFD in Indiana, you can be, in and out of, basically get all your due diligence, all your upfront costs, everything. You're in and out for $3,000, roughly. It's a big difference. It depends on the type of, what you got going on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I try and looking at the deal to just kind of get an intuition about what the likely course of it will be, whether we will be jumping into legal. When you have a borrower who hasn't, maybe they've made one recent payment, but we have one like this. She made one payment in December, but prior to that had not made a payment in 5 years. So that is someone, get ready. You're going to have a lawyer involved. But some, when someone's just a few months behind or they've been, making their sporadic payments and stuff, it feels a lot less likely that you'll be immediately in court. Though when you asked the question about borrower outreach, a lot of the more experienced people were instantly, it was very clear that they instantly start legal on everything. There is no borrower outreach. They just, the demand letter, that's the borrower outreach.
Here's a scenario, guys. This is actually one of the reasons I jumped on the call tonight, if you don't mind. So I had one of our favorite servicers who we had a discussion about a month ago or so. This is kind of the reason I don't get them to do much borrower outreach. But I gave them, they have a handful of loans that are doing it. Well, this loan in particular was, I'd have to look, but I think bought it at the beginning of the year, I'm pretty sure. And within a month, got in contact with the borrower, or the servicer did. And at that point in time, they hadn't paid in about 4 or 5 months, I think, maybe 6, somewhere around there. So the servicer said, well, let's get a financial package out to you. And fill that out. So this was a couple months ago. So I've been hounding them. I'm like, okay, have you got it yet? Have you got it yet? So I finally got it the other day. No payments have been made whatsoever. So it's now about 10 months behind. Well, in the financial package, so this borrower has not a great income, but steady income, full-time. And then the expense / income analysis. She's without so the mortgage payment's around $500. Well, magically her deficit is $500 a month.
Every time it comes back that way. It's amazing how it's every time it comes back like that.
Yeah. Although she's got a $150 cell phone bill every month, cable bill of about $60, or $89. Oh, the cable's $89. Internet was $60. It's like, okay, there's like almost your mortgage payment right there. In any event, so the servicer asked, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, she's obviously in a deficit. Tell her she only has basically one option. That's to sell the property because there's some pretty decent equity in the property. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up and see what you would do in this scenario.
So,
No demand letter sent yet, but I think that's like the only recourse. Send the demand letter and tell her to sell the property. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
yep. So I've got one. This one I think actually tops yours. Okay. I've got a property that had about $3,000 in back taxes, and the borrower makes sporadic payments. Okay. So, in the servicing notes is like, okay, they want to keep the property and so forth. So, work something out where it's like, okay, I'll pay the taxes. I'll get them on a loan mod. And this is taken because the attorney in North Carolina I've been using is, as slow as a turtle. So it's been very, very painful. It's gone on over about 3-4 months to just get them to draft this. It's actually going to be a cancellation of land contract. Well, there's going to be a cancellation of land contract and a new one to just update it to the laws in North Carolina. So I finally get it from the attorney. So I send it to the servicer and I say, get the borrowers to sign this. Servicer comes back and says, oh, I don't know where the borrowers are. They're not the ones who pay anymore. They gave the house to somebody else who's been the one who's been paying sporadically. I'm like, what? I'm like, I just, I'm sitting there thinking I could have just forfeited, foreclosed on them 4 months ago and stuff. And your note, the person wants to keep the house. The person who wants to keep the house isn't even the person on the land contract, and the person that's even making the payments or paying any of the taxes. I'm like,
wow.
Are you serious?
And the servicer just never revealed any of these details, right? Or did they not know them?
The person paying the bills and the person they're talking to isn't even the person in the contract. So
that's full service for you.
So in your option, Chad, so I've got a similar situation too, where I've got a borrower who was responsible for the taxes. Taxes over 10 grand because it's in my favorite state, where taxes are high. And he's on a payment plan, but so the house is worth like 100 grand. And the UPB is like 30,000 on this thing, but the guy, doesn't have a lot of income, and the wife doesn't have a lot of income, and just the tax payment on the past due and a new tax payment is $800 a month.
Wow.
And their income per month is only like $1,400. So I'm like, you can't afford a mortgage. I mean, I can't even charge you anything because you've got, other expenses and stuff. Your taxes alone are, basically like 46% of your income. So they're like, well, we need to keep it and this and that. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to sell the property, and they haven't accepted that yet. So, and that's the challenge you're gonna have, is getting them to accept it. So you almost gotta have to force them to by sending the demand letter and starting that process.
Yeah. So what I do in your situation, Chad, is I kind of say to them, your situation is unsustainable. I think you recognize that. If you were applying for this loan right now, you would not legally be, I would not legally be able to sell you the house because you don't have enough income to qualify for the loan that you're in.
Right.
So I give them a chance to come up with a plan. So, if they have an extra bedroom or whatever, you could rent out a room.
Yeah, I suggested that too.
Yeah, you can explore ways of increasing your income, cutting your expenses. I'll give you a week to get back to me with a comprehensive plan for how you're going to be able to afford the house. And in the absence of that, there really isn't a choice,
Yeah, that's kind of what I presented back. I said, cut your cable, phone, internet. There's $300, $400. And then I've had 2 separate drive-bys, and there's like 6 vehicles in the driveway at all times. maybe some of those other people should be contributing towards the mortgage.
Right.
And then short of that, you got to sell the property.
Yeah.
And then, well, plus she's $5,000 in arrears now, so I really don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, and then the conversation becomes like, either you can sell the property, you can sign the property back over to me, or, you know, if you sign it over to me, I will give you some money. If I have to go a legal route, you know, to resolve this, then there will be nothing
right
for you.
Here's what I'll tell you, though,
spend
Chad.
it on the lawyer instead of on you. I'd rather give it to you.
Here's a challenge you're going to face too. I've had this in the past, is if you let the borrower sell the property, it's never going to sell.
Yeah, no, I would
They won't let
my own realtor on it for sure.
Yeah, because they won't let the realtor, well, you can't come today, or they'll schedule an appointment and, oh, we can't come, or I've had that in the past where I actually had a property in Mississippi that I used the agent. We had the house sold, and I was a note holder, so it was a note, not a land contract. The borrower refused to sign the documentation. We sent mobile notaries, and she refused to sign.
What was she signing?
The sale. So we're short selling the property.
I see.
So she was
on title. Yeah.
She was on title. So I'm like, okay, we're going to allow it a short sale, sign over the deed. And, you know, we're giving her 4 weeks to move out from the date it was signed. And she refused to sign it. So I ended up having to foreclose on her. And, you know, it was a borrower who nothing was ever her fault. Everything, you know, anything that happened was because of bad luck and not because of anything of her cause.
So there was no cash for keys in the offing there to motivate her to?
Oh, there was. It was $1,500. She would have got $1,500 to sign the paperwork.
Yeah, I don't know if people just cannot, you know, they just cannot accept the reality of the situation, or they feel that stalling has worked in the past and why won't it keep working now? Until somebody does it. I have a borrower in Indiana who has ignored everything. She ignored every outreach effort. She ignored there's a contract for deed. She ignored every piece of legal paperwork that came. She has never, I even sent someone over there to talk to her, and that person was able to talk to her college-age son. This woman has never responded. Now her land contract has been canceled, and an eviction is being arranged where the sheriff lockout. In fact, I need a lockout person in Gary, Indiana, if anyone has one. Please send me a recommendation.
Oh, sorry, I'll jump in really quick. I had really good luck recently with Safeguard Properties. They've got a SGP now, I think it's called, .com. You go on there, you put in your service, and it's like, boom, I had some grass cut. I need some grass cut, and I had some different properties, and they had it done within like 2 days.
Wow. So I'm sorry, what's it called?
So Safeguard Properties, so SGP now, NOW.com. So you go on there and it's like a la carte. You can pick whatever service you want, and they call you back like immediately, and you pay for it online, and they do it, you know, within a few days, and they send you. I just had some different properties for the grass to get cut. They sent an entire report, and it only cost me $45 to cut the grass. I'm like, when I'm buying a property or a note, I'm going to send them out to cut the grass because it was unbelievable the detail they put into this thing. Anyway,
are they national?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Are they national in scope?
Yeah, Safeguard Properties, yeah, they're huge. So they're all across the country.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. I signed up with Sandcastle like 2 months ago, because I had an urgent need for locks changed, photos taken at a property. And, what?
Slow. They're slow.
I slowed down?
No, Safeguard. Sorry. Sandcastle. they're slow to get your.
Oh my God, just, hey, like you get in touch with them, like, hey, I would like to, become a customer. And they're like, great, we will have someone call you back. Like a week goes by, and I'm like, hello, I still would like to be a customer.
No, this SGP now, they called me with like an hour later, and they had the grass cut in 2 days. It was crazy.
I'm calling them first thing in the morning. I have a number of things that need to happen.
No, just go on their website and just fill in the stuff, register for an account, and that's the quickest way to do it. And they're
okay.
very responsive.
I
Anyway,
can do it tonight then.
sorry to interject, but
So
you were telling a story about your CFD and.
Yeah. So now this eviction, this sheriff lockout is being arranged, and I was petrified, thinking, oh my God, what if she's older? This is before I knew she had a college age son. I thought, what if I always picture these old decrepit women, who don't understand what's happening. And I thought, I feel terrible. I don't even know if this woman realizes what's going on, if she has the capacity to understand what this is. And then I found out she's like 38 years old. And I thought, oh, forget it. She can handle it. But, someone's going to knock on the door, and I don't know if she's sitting there, they're going to like tell her to get up and walk out, and they're going to like I don't know if they're going to put her stuff outside, or if they're just going to have my guy change the locks, and then she has to make an appointment to go get her stuff. But I don't even remember what I started.
Where is it again? It's in Indiana.
Yeah, Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, Christine mentioned reach out to Gene Chandler.
Oh, yeah. I love Gene, but the last couple times I've asked him for suggestions, he's like, I don't know anybody. I think he's just getting tired of being the Indiana guy.
Yeah, no, I think SGP now, I think they've got that service. Well, they'll definitely change the locks, but they'll do the clean out for you as well. But it's awesome. $50 a cubic yard, so be careful.
I've always had better luck on clean outs, just finding a local guy.
Yeah, property managers is usually the best. I just go on Facebook and
I just need the lockout at this stage, I think, and then figure out the stuff. I imagine this woman will want her stuff and will want to move it. Hopefully.
It depends on the county. I've never done one in Gary, but some sheriffs will require you to have a moving crew there, and you've got to the day of. Yeah.
I guess I better find out.
Yeah, I've done way too many lately, and that's the majority of them. They want you to have a moving crew. So, yeah.
We did have a few other questions, kind of jumping back on the reserves on deals. One was the 2 to 3K of money being funded by your JV partner to deal going to reserve. Yes. So the way I structure my deals is, there's the acquisition price of, if I bought it for 20 grand, this is what the price is. And then there's, so it's 20 grand plus an extra $3,000. So they fund 23. And then, your bookkeeper will basically say, it doesn't matter, that the 3,000 quote is reserves. It's how you manage it. But at the end of the day, it's just a liability for 23,000. Then the other component question was, from Matt, that it depends on the expenses in the state and the house, and if you have a house that's vacant and with a blue tarp on the roof, then more than likely you're going to have more expenses because you have to have the grass cut, you're going to have to get it winterized, and then you probably want to do something with the roof because also the county is going to be chasing you down as well to fix it, or they'll start fining you as well. Just want to answer those questions. Any other questions from anybody? Any other topics? Kind of did a
hot topics.
Kind of did a full 360 of just various topics this evening. One question I'll ask people out there is, as Gail and I record podcasts not on the open mic night, what are some of the things that you all out there want to hear about or have us talk about? We typically record one open mic and one regular podcast episode a week. So, we've got plenty of stuff to talk about, but if there's certain things that people do want to hear about, we're happy to discuss those or provide more input on or share more stories or case studies. So we'd like to hear from you guys also who participate. What do you like to hear? What do you want to hear from us? So Dave likes case studies. So I've got, between, for case studies, Gail, between you and I over the last, this year, I've closed on, God, probably 15 plus assets that I could talk all day long about. And I know you've got some as well that we can easily start talking about some of these case studies.
Yeah, the great riddle of my life right now is I have a 700 square foot house sitting vacant in Indiana. Lots of Indiana tonight. And I just got an $800 electric bill from there. And I have just been through this whole, discussion with it's interestingly a place where there's one utility company that provides both electric and water. And there's zero water usage and there's all this electrical usage. And, I can tell when I talk to them that they think maybe I let somebody stay in the house or something. Like, they think there's something fishy about the way I'm talking about this. And I'm like, no, seriously, no one has been there with my permission. I don't know if anyone's broken in. I don't know if they're cooking meth. I don't know what is going on. But, they indulged me by removing the meter and doing like an autopsy on it, and reported to me that it's not 100% great, it's 102%. So they kind of threw it back at me, like you and your claims of no electrical use.
Two things I was going to mention. One, Dave, who's on right now, actually has an interesting scenario. If he wants to hop on and talk about a situation that he brought up with me, if you want to come on, Dave, I can bring you on and you can ask the group kind of what their thoughts are on how you'd handle a situation. No mic, okay. Bring it on another time though, because that's actually a very good story. The other is, and this is from Christine. She said, if there's a podcast that we record that explains how we work together on our partnership deals, who does what, love to hear more, especially since Scott was talking this week about combining forces with others to accomplish more. So this is interesting because
well, you can tell like he's the overlord and he just sits in his office and calls people and makes demands, and I'm the hardworking, sincere worker bee.
So actually, I would say, I have to admit, on the deals we've done, yes, Gail has absolutely done a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm not, I have to admit that because it's true. But here's the thing, actually, about combining forces on deals. It's kind of, I view it almost like roommates. If you have one roommate, I think it's good. If you have two roommates, then typically two gang up on one, and
complicated. Yeah.
And I think also I've had conversation with people about trying to go down and take a tape or get 3-5 people to go take a tape down. And it's just a lot of work and I think risk and just factoring in who gets what and stuff. And, I'd say partnering on things or partnering with other note investors, I would definitely make sure you have conversations with them. I would meet with them. I would have, talk to them about what would you do in this situation, and make sure you're kind of both similar in your values in regards to how things possess. And Gail and I think, are very similar in values. Style-wise, we are the complete opposite. But
we have different lifestyles completely. So
Christine said maybe not necessarily on deals, but on your business at least. I believe working with another person. So here's something so for business, I highly recommend that you don't have to partner with people, but have conversations with people on how they run their business or how they do things, or share a deal with somebody that, if I have a deal, if somebody said, hey, can I see how you do this or so forth? There's no secret formula or secret sauce to how you do this stuff. But if someone wanted to see, or, how, one of the podcasts I was mentioned to Gail that we should do is kind of, things you do on a monthly basis, or how do you manage, your portfolio. And I was going to pop up on the screen and kind of show how I do things, and people can follow it or they can't. But, from a business perspective, I think it's valuable to have conversations with people throughout. I talked to Chad for an hour the other night. Sorry, Gail, I was cheating on you.
Where was I when this was going on?
Adam,
we were out with Eric.
It was the night you did not answer the phone, actually.
That's right.
But I've had conversation recently with like Adam Adams on some things as well, and other note investors, and Dave, who's on tonight, called me. We had a conversation today, and I learned stuff just hearing other people's stories. So.
Yeah, I think that like a buddy system, like it doesn't have to be the same person all the time, but it's really helpful. I have to say, like before I was in notes, when I would see women at real estate investing conferences and stuff, they were almost always the spouses of the guys who were actually investing. And when I see couples who work together, I always feel like a little wistful, because my husband's never been interested in real estate. He's kind of in the basement right now watching TV, hoping I'm building an empire up here. It's just so helpful to know someone who is kind of battling the same dragons that you are, and kind of learning from the experience, and as open and generous about sharing as Chris is. I think that's really clear in the way he conducts himself on social media and here. It's just great I can talk to friends, but of course, their interest is, like you can say a few things to like normal people who aren't in this world, but after, 5 minutes, they're really done with this topic. And it's just kind of great. I mean, Chris and I talk virtually every day, probably for an hour while he's sitting in traffic going home at the end of the day.
And you're right about the buddy system, because we both, I think, learn a lot from each other. And like Christine just mentioned, her husband's on the sidelines and wrapped up in his businesses, and same thing, my wife is very super busy and doesn't get involved. I know Neil really doesn't get involved. So, I think, like I said, almost like a buddy system of, talking to people and just running ideas back and forth off of things. And I know there's a lot of stuff just back and forth between Gail and I was going down a different path, and she's like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. It's, things that you can definitely do. So, one other question we did get that popped through is, how often do you keep a note and buy out the investor to keep his long-term cash flow? I'd say that kind of depends on the investor. I've done it in the past where investors wanted out on the deal and I was going to hold it. So, we agreed on a price and I kept it in my portfolio. A lot of times though, typically if the investor wants out, usually I may just look and just sell off that asset as well at a point in time. So it's really case by case. It really depends on you, what your goals are, whether you want the cash to take it and reinvest it, or do you want to buy them out, or they want to stay in the deal. So it's not really a specific percentage. It's really a case by case.
So I have a question. If you've been JVing on something, your IRA cannot buy it, right, from your regular company?
No. Well, it's disqualified transaction. So,
right.
So yes, you don't want to, if your mother had an IRA, you had a note, you can't sell it to your mother's IRA. So anything that you have, you just got to be careful of all those disqualified,
Can you sell it to an intermediary and then buy it with your IRA?
I've asked that question. And,
I know, because we're always looking for the angle.
It's
indefensible.
well, here's kind of here if it's a legitimate transaction. So let's say I have a note I sell to you. If you hold it for 8 months and then my mother buys it in her IRA, that wouldn't be prohibited because you've held it, you've managed it. If I sold it to you at $9.50 tonight,
and she bought it tomorrow,
and tomorrow she bought it, that would be frowned upon. But if you bought it, held it, worked it, and and there's no set time period, but reality of it is, that's something that doesn't look, I don't think would be, I probably still wouldn't do it, but it wouldn't look as bad. But you just got to be, careful on that. So
yeah.
Let's see.
Okay.
And then Christine mentioned disqualified descendants and ascendants, but laterally brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles is fine. That is correct. It's my understanding that those are okay. So
siblings and cousins,
yeah.
and aunts and uncles.
Fiancés are, also are not disqualified. So
really,
if you're not married, then you can work it through that avenue.
Like a major reason not to get married, then, right? To be able to.
Brother-in-laws, I don't, brother, sisters, brother-in-laws. I mean,
anything with brother in the title or sister.
So, one thing we should talk about in an upcoming podcast too is I just had an issue with somebody about this whole Detroit issue, so we should bring.
I was actually going to suggest we do that tomorrow, and talk about what's happening at Quest and just these changes that are happening.
Yep. So it seems, and I don't know if others have experienced it, but it seems that for me and some of the deals I've done recently with people in Quest is still an excellent company. They've tightened their belt.
Things are changing there.
Things have changed where I find it a little more cumbersome to get funding pushed through in a timely manner. I don't know. And part of it could be because some of the people I've been dealing with, it's their first deals and they may not have filled the paperwork out properly, but I'm curious for people out there as well, just, how they use them, Quest or other IRAs. I've dealt with equity in the past and, my hair's getting much grayer with them, but so it's something we can bring up as well. So
right.
It's
you ready to wrap?
Yep, I'm ready to wrap. So it's 9:50. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening for another episode of the Good Deeds No Investing podcast. And Gail, any last and final words?
No. Thanks everyone for joining us. Be sure to sign up. Oh, our website has been hacked. Can people sign up right now, or is that it's no man's land?
No, they can't. So
okay.
Our website was hacked, and it's funny because Scott posted today his was hacked too because a WordPress plugin blog got hacked, and a ton of podcasters use the same blog because it's podcast only. So the company we use who hosts it is pulling their hair out because they're everyone who we work with, all their sites got hacked.
Because they went through them.
I don't think they did.
No.
No.
They.
Yeah, we'll never know, but
I think we do. They are patient one. Everything comes from them. Mm-hmm. So yes, our site got the bird flu. You can't sign up, but
Christine asked which plugin. I will look it up. I'm not sure which plugin it was, but there is. And the other thing too is if you actually Google it, it does pop up because WordPress plugins for blogs are the most often hacked item that's out there. So.
Yeah, I lost a huge site that way in a previous life.
So, and we've got the plugins right now. Basically, just we turned them off, so you can go listen to the podcast on the site. But unfortunately, all our blog posts are not there right now, so we're putting that back up. But by the time this actually gets published on the podcast, because typically when we record, they get published about a week or so later, it will be fixed by then. But if you're watching this on YouTube, we apologize. Hopefully it's up and running by then. So.
Oh, the trials of modern life. Well, thank you, everybody. We don't always say this in our evening broadcast, but go out and do some good deeds.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.